are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
A lot of news around Aaron Rodgers over the last couple days. And it is the kind of thing that I understand can get tiring, can get boring. And Peacock and Williamson talked about it. Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson talked about it on the Peacock and Williamson show. And Matt said, look, the people that he talked to don't think that there's a chance Rodgers leaves, or at least they don't think, or they're confident he is staying.
Almost anyone that I bring this up to, and people that would really have a strong indicator, have pretty much told me, don't expect Rodgers or Davante Adams to leave Green Bay. You know, that he's going to get a big contract. He's coming off an MVP. If you extend Adams and Rodgers, you can get pretty cap friendly by pushing their money and their cap hits down the road. There's no chance Adams hits free agency. I mean, at a minimum, it's a franchise situation. No way is he on the open market, 0%. And as is the case with the cap, and I'm very guilty of this as well, when I start digging into cap situations late in the season, playoffs, after the year, you look at these teams, you know, our conversation with the Saints, a lot of these cash-strapped teams just aren't as strapped as you think when you start moving money around. Mm-hmm. And if you extend Rodgers and you extend Adams, give them 3-4 year deals, whatever, you can bump a lot of that down the road. And I'm just hearing more and more from people I trust that those guys aren't going anywhere. You know, the Packers think they're a contender, they're a Super Bowl contender, and they are going to max out their credit cards to live out the Rodgers years to their full.
Matt is not the only one who feels this way. Charles Robinson over at Yahoo Sports, we talked about some of his reporting earlier this week, mentioned that the teams who could potentially be interested in Aaron Rodgers have heard radio silence from the Packers. And that's interesting because when Brian Gutekunst said a couple days ago at the Combine that he had not heard from GMs about an Aaron Rodgers trade, we thought that he was BSing, that he was full of it. But what might be more appropriate to characterize this, what might be a better way to frame it, is that these teams have not heard any signals from the Rodgers camp or the Packers camp that there is a trade to be had. And that is the more important piece of information, is if the Broncos and the Raiders and the Browns and the Dolphins and the teams who could otherwise be in on a Rodgers trade have not really had any traction or even basic understanding that Rodgers could be available. Charles Robinson said flat out, those teams are moving on to Plan B. Plan B has now become Plan A because they just don't think that's going to happen, or at least they can't count on it happening. And we're getting to the point where now it's butting up against deadlines. We talked about this yesterday a little bit. And that I don't want to focus on it because the Packers have time and they're gonna do some of the things that they were always going to do, like move on from Zadarius Smith and you know, rework some of these deals, extend Jair Alexander, and figure out something with Preston Smith, because you have to pay some of these guys just to move forward. And because Preston Smith is a good player, Jair Alexander is an elite player, of course you want to extend those guys and sign those guys. I don't think that's, you know, like a weird take. But for the Packers, if they're not fielding calls and teams don't think Aaron Rodgers is available and they're moving on to plans B, C, D, and E, I think that's a pretty good signal of where everything is. Because if you're David Dunn, you're the agent for Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers has signaled to you, I'm probably gonna explore my options. You have to be back channeling. You have to be doing the thing. Okay, Denver, what's it gonna take? And there was a report yesterday from a Denver source that the Broncos were unwilling to pay the Packers' price for Aaron Rodgers. And I think that raises questions of like, well, how do we know what the Packers' price is? Well, because agents exist and because, the tampering rules are not always adhered to. Shock. Quelle surprise. But I think you can look at that and say, well, that's just Denver going, we just weren't that interested anyway. Yeah, like it's not you, it's us. When really, no. It turns out Rodgers is not going anywhere. And so in order to save face, it's, well, the price got too high. Even if the price had never, according to anyone that we've heard from, negotiated any kind of trade compensation, that it never got even close to that far. And so the reality is Denver is reading the tea leaves, and probably more than just reading the tea leaves. They probably have a pretty good indication of where this is all going. And so they've decided, well, it's probably not going to be Aaron Rodgers. And so now it's Russell Wilson, it's Kirk Cousins, it's some of these other, so not lateral moves to be sure, but improvements that are more marginal than it would have been with Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson, a legit superstar quarterback, so let's not denigrate him. But Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, that's not going to change your life really if you're Denver. You're not a Super Bowl contender with Jimmy Garoppolo with this roster. Now, could you be in better position with Jimmy G in Denver and a full complement of players plus your picks versus Rodgers minus the 9th overall pick, minus Jerry Jeudy, minus 2 future firsts and a second? You might be. But Green Bay has had no indication to anyone else, based on everything that's been reported, everything that I've heard, is there's no engagement, there's no discussion to even be had. And part of that is Aaron Rodgers has not made clear a final decision. People inside the organization, a lot of them are still waiting to hear the final word from Aaron Rodgers. And so how can you even have negotiations with a player that we don't know his future? That's part of all of this as well. So the feeling around the league is that he's back. The feeling from teams that could be interested in Aaron Rodgers, that feeling is he's back. So what are we to conclude in all of this? To quote the great philosopher John Wick, yeah, I'm thinking he's back. Okay, I paraphrase it. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. This is an incredible product. And you hear a lot on podcasts, on the radio about products, and it's hard to know what is real and what is not real. It's really unbelievable sometimes when you just go, that seems too good to be true. And I'm telling you, Built Bar does seem too good to be true. It seemed too good to be true to me until I tried them. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. Believe me when I say that. This is not just puffery. This is not just a thing I say. I truly believe this is the best protein bar on the market. It is the best tasting protein bar on the market. They have protein infused marshmallow. I mean, come on. Their Puffs line, unbelievable. I love the coconut one. They're all covered in 100% chocolate. High in protein, high in fiber. Low in net carbs, low in sugar, low in calorie. They taste delicious. How can that be? Explain to me how that can be. I don't get it. I don't pretend to understand it. But that's the real deal when it comes to Built Bar. And you can try it for yourself. Incredible flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond, white chocolate cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie. I love the coconut brownie. I love all their coconut flavors. And when you go to Built.com, you can get 15% off when you use the promo code LOCKED15. That's 15% off when you use the promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com. And thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. And I'll make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available on all platforms. The quarterback position in this draft. It's not very good. It's not very good. There is no quarterback who is even a consensus top 20 pick. I don't even know that there's a consensus first round pick where everyone agrees that, like, yeah, he's definitely a first round player in a vacuum. First round grade. I don't think so. Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Carson Strong in the mix, I guess. It's not great. It's not great. And so you go back to the discussion we had a couple weeks ago about Jordan Love and where he would be in this draft class. Malik Willis, better athlete, faster, no doubt. Big arm, probably a stronger pure arm in terms of, like, he can throw at 60, 70 yards. Is he more consistent? Arm talent is one of those funny things. Like, is arm talent just the velocity you can generate? Is it just the distance that you can throw a ball? Or is it also the combination of trajectory, of touch, of accuracy, plus power? Hey, I can fit in this cover hole 2 shot, cover 2 hole shot. These are tongue twisters, you guys. Where it has to be the perfect trajectory and the right speed. Or you've got a sideline shot versus cover 3 where you have to get it there before the safety can come over. Or you've got a seam ball against cover 2 over the linebacker but in front of the safety. That's arm talent. And Jordan Love has as much arm talent, if not more, than anyone in this draft class. So, and no one has sparkling collegiate resumes. Are you serious? Malik Willis is going to go in the first round and basically all the underlying metrics, like he never quite had a season as consistent as what we saw from Jordan Love when he was a sophomore. Just didn't. I mean, his last season, 27 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 2,800 yards. Fine. That's a fine season. You go to his 2020 season, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's incredibly talented. He probably would walk into the NFL and be the second best rushing quarterback in the league. He has got arm ability, arm talent. As a complete player, he's not Jordan Love. Jordan Love's better. But Malik Willis could be a top 15 pick. Desmond Ridder could be a top 15 pick. Kenny Pickett could be a top 15 pick. And no one is going to bat an eye because they're quarterbacks and we're going to go, okay, yes, but. But because of the Packers situation, it's going to look different. And because of who else was in that draft class, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa. And by the way, are we like 100% sure that Tua is better than Jordan Love? Like 100% sure? I'm not even like 60% sure. I think if you put Jordan Love on that team with those guys, with Davante Parker and Mike Gesicki and Jalen Waddle and not Will Fuller because Will Fuller doesn't play because he's always hurt. He could have put up Tua's numbers in a heavy RPO offense that he's been running since he was 16. He could have done it. Just remember that and I only bring this up not to troll, not to get clicks, whatever. The quarterback's performed at the combine yesterday. We saw them throw. We saw them run. Some guys performed better than we thought. Some guys performed sort of as we thought. Jordan Love is younger than some of these guys, despite the fact that he is 23 already. It just seems like important information that you should have. Just seems like important information that you should have as we move forward. Doesn't matter that he's going to be... Does it mean that he's going to be better than these guys? No, of course not. And I would never say that it does, but it is a consideration. And I think it impacts ceiling. I am a big breakout age person. I'm a big age person. Someone who is, we talked about this with Rashawn Gary yesterday. If you're 21 coming out as a rookie who's raw versus 24 coming out as a rookie who's raw, big difference in how I expect you to develop. So if you're 21 playing like Jordan Love, there's a chance, a better chance that you can get much better than if you're 23, 24 playing like Jordan Love. Well, this class is all a bunch of guys who are 22, 23, 24 and who play like Jordan Love, or at least are as consistent as Jordan Love. And this is not even Jordan Love apology tour time. It's just trying to compare apples to apples. And yeah, it's probably like Golden Delicious versus Granny Smith versus Red Delicious versus Honey Crisp versus, Cortland. I've run out of apples that I can name. Probably not. Probably can go a couple more. But then at least you're comparing varietals of the same thing. And that's what this quarterback class is. Jordan Love would probably be at the top of this class. Be the most talented guy in this class, the most consistent guy in this class, the most desirable guy in this class. And he'd probably go in the top 10. One of these quarterbacks is going to go in the top 10, and they're a worse prospect than Jordan Love was. That's the reality. That's the reality. All right, we're going to be back next week as we move through the combine. A lot's going to happen over the course of the weekend. We got some interviews coming next week with people who are in Indianapolis. Unfortunately, I cannot be there as much as I would like to be there. Not that I don't like the St. Elmo's horseradish, just that from a scheduling standpoint, it's not going to work out. But we're going to have interviews next week to talk about what's going on there. What is the scuttlebutt in Indy? That is always just as big as what's going on the field is what's going on off the field, what's going on in dark steakhouses off the record. And so we'll get into all of that next week. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775 to stay Locked On Packers.